session. I would like to warmly welcome Secretary General Taha amongst our family. This is his first foreign ministerial meeting after his appointment as the Secretary General. He and his team also deserve appreciation for their strong support and rapid mobilization of efforts for the conference arrangements. Pakistan is also gratified by the trust reposed by the OIC membership in Pakistan to host this extraordinary session. Excellencies, your presence here today at such a short notice affirms the importance that the international community as a whole, in particular, accord to the well-being of the people of Afghanistan. For the people of Afghanistan, the significance of this gathering goes beyond mere symbolism. It is a matter of survival for them. As we speak, over half the Afghan population, 22.8 million people, a number larger than entire populations of over 2/3 of the UN member states, face food shortages. Millions of Afghan children are at risk of dying from malnutrition. This situation has been brought about to this pass by a multiplicity of factors. Prolonged drought, years of conflict, poor governance, and Afghanistan's excessive dependence on foreign aid. You would recall that Pakistan hosted the first extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers in Islamabad in January 1980. 41 years on, Pakistan is again obliged to host another extraordinary session to discuss the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the same country. It is unfortunate that the hardship and suffering of the Afghan people has not eased. The OIC, since the very beginning of Afghan crisis, has stood firmly by the people of Afghanistan. It has consistently supported the right of self-determination, of political and economic emancipation of the people of Palestine and of the Kashmiris suffering under illegal occupation. History is our witness that this organization, even amidst major global political turbulences and crisis, has not only consistently supported the rights of the people, but also called upon the rest of the international community to act and think beyond their domestic and internal political and economic compulsions. What we face today is no different than what this organization has witnessed repeatedly. The developments in August 2021 may have altered the political landscape in Afghanistan, but they have not made the compelling needs of the Afghan people any less pressing or urgent. The World Food Programme has warned that Afghanistan could become the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. The UN Emergency Relief Coordinator, who we have the pleasure of having with us today, characterized Afghanistan as being in free fall. These are dire warnings by those with the most intimate and direct knowledge of the grave situation on the ground in Afghanistan. This is a moment to extend a collective helping hand. It is not the time to withhold support. Pakistan concurs with the UN Secretary General that humanitarian support must be provided without conditions. I am confident that I speak for the OIC membership today in reaffirming that this gathering is about the people of Afghanistan, and the only message it wishes to send is one of our unity of purpose and resolve. On its part, Pakistan has demonstrated that its approach towards Afghanistan is guided by the urgent humanitarian concerns. Notwithstanding our state of relations with India, as a special gesture of goodwill towards the Afghan people, Pakistan has decided to allow transportation of 50,000 metric tons of wheat and life-saving medicines from India to Afghanistan through the land route. This organization and the Islamic Ummah as a whole has come forward to offer its hand of partnership to the United Nations, international financial institutions, and major donors to bring to bear collective expertise in pushing against the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Let me also express my gratitude to the United Nations, IFIs, regional organizations, and other members of the international community for responding positively to Pakistan's call again in such short notice, to sit with us here in Islamabad and look for ways to alleviate the human suffering in Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, as an immediate neighbor, Pakistan is a witness to and is maximally impacted by the growing humanitarian travails of Afghanistan. We cannot ignore this reality. As the situation stands, we cannot rule out the danger of complete economic meltdown in Afghanistan. The Afghan economy is likely to witness a contraction of 30% within a year unless the tide is stemmed. Cash is needed to revive the economy, to pay salaries, restore small businesses, and reboot the banking system. There is no money available to pay for energy, food, medicines, and other essential supplies. The consequences of a major humanitarian crisis and economic collapse in Afghanistan will be horrendous. Massive human suffering, mass exodus of Afghan refugees, radicalization, terrorism, and instability, with grave consequences for regional and international peace and security. We must not allow this to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, for its part, Pakistan is doing all it can to help our Afghan brethren. We have committed $30 million in assistance to Afghanistan, humanitarian assistance of around 1,700 metric tons of relief goods has already been provided. Our efforts are inspired by an abiding vision of solidarity and goodwill for Afghans. No other country stands to gain more from peace in Afghanistan than Pakistan. A peaceful, stable, prosperous Afghanistan will offer a rich peace dividend for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the entire region. Excellencies, this extraordinary session must usher in visible change and signal to the people of Afghanistan that we are united in helping them stabilize their economy and country. OIC can act as a catalyst and a conduit in this regard. I propose a 6-point framework for the OIC to lead. First, we could create a vehicle within the OIC to channel immediate and sustained humanitarian and financial support to the Afghan people, including from pledges by the OIC member states and other donors. Second, we should agree to increase investment in the people of Afghanistan bilaterally or through the OIC in areas such as education, health, technical and vocational skills to the Afghan youth. Third, a group of experts comprising the OIC, the United Nations and the IFIs be established to consider ways and means to facilitate Afghanistan's access to legitimate banking services and to ease the serious liquidity challenge of the Afghan people. Fourth, we should focus on enhancing food security of the Afghan people. The Islamic Organization for Food Security can and must lead this effort. Fifth, invest in building capacity of Afghan institutions in countering terrorism and combating illicit trade in narcotics. Finally, engage with Afghan authorities to help meet the expectations of the international community, in particular regarding political and social inclusivity, respect for human rights, especially the rights of women and girls, and combating terrorism. Excellencies, an unprecedented opportunity to consolidate peace beacons. We must not repeat the mistakes of the past. Today, we have before us a historic chance to turn the tide. The great poet philosopher of the East, Allama Muhammad Iqbal, characterized Afghanistan as a pivot for peace, stability and prosperity for the entire region. This extraordinary session offers us the platform to recommit ourselves to the vision of restoring Afghanistan as the beating heart of Asia. We must seize this historic opportunity. I thank you. Now, I have the honor to invite His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Chair of the Islamic Summit, for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And God most gracious, most merciful, and peace and blessings be upon the noble Prophet and his king and companion, Your Excellency Mr. Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, His Excellency Muhammad Shah, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Your Excellencies and Highnesses, the Honorable Ministers, Honorable Secretary General of the OIC, Honorable Ladies and Gentlemen, Honorable Participants, Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Allow me first of all to extend our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to the government of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and to its people for their warm hospitality in this important meeting and for the excellent arrangements for this meeting despite the shortage of notice. I wish also to express due thanks for the efforts of the Honorable Brothers from the General Secretariat and for the excellent arrangements from the General Secretariat. In this respect, I would like to congratulate His Excellency the Secretary General. He is taking his office at the head of the General Secretariat. Your Excellencies, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, based on its full commitment to joint action and as chair of the 4th Islamic Summit Conference has called for this 17th session of the extraordinary session in response to the hardships faced by the Afghani people, particularly with the approach of the winter season and the sufferings met by the children and old people that need urgent support and help, particularly with bearing in mind the economic difficulties that have caused not only a humanitarian crisis but can lead to further instability and impact both regional and international peace. Your Excellencies, we are convened today under the umbrella of the OIC, this long-time organization based on principled goals and objectives of the noble Islamic faith that involve peace, security, and extending help to the needy, middle-of-the-road action, and rejecting all kinds of manifestations of terrorism. Our joint action under the umbrella of the OIC, this OIC that represents 2/3 of the world community, represents action that is based on coordination for the benefit of peace and security and the peace of the world. Our meeting expresses our solidarity with the Afghani people and sends a message to the international community of the importance for immediate action to put an end to the degraded situation in Afghanistan. Your Excellencies and Highnesses, Mr. Chairman, the sufferings of the Afghani people have lasted for too long, and the Afghani people have faced instability and lack of peace. And we witness the action of the Afghani people to put an end to this tragedy. And this calls for communal action between all parties and rejection of all forms and manifestations of segregation and terrorism and extremism, bearing in mind the need to respect human rights and the rights of women as assured by the Islamic Sharia. The unity of the Afghani people is the proper way towards security and rejecting outside intervention. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia aims to help towards the proper findings and outcomes of this meeting to extend urgent assistance to the Afghani people under the leadership of the organization and the help of the various international bodies and organizations, including the Islamic Solidarity Fund and the ISESCO and the initiative of food supplies assistance for the Afghani people and the various international financial institutions and international community to reach out to the Afghani people and alleviate their sufferings. Let our organization play a major role in this respect. The Kingdom urges the member states of the OIC and the members of the other international organizations to partake in extending the necessary humanitarian support to the Afghani people and to prevent the degradation of the economic situation in Afghanistan. The Kingdom has extended over the past decades support to various humanitarian works for the benefit of the Afghani people. Our help has extended 1 billion Saudi riyals, and we have held bridges and airlifted support food supplies to the Afghani people through the Center of King Salman for human support for the benefit of the Afghani people. Your Excellencies and Highnesses, Afghanistan stands today once again at the crossroads with a situation that could lead to chaos, that would adversely impact all concerned, both regionally and internationally. And this reflects the importance for us to put in further efforts through our Islamic action to overcome the difficulties and the responsibilities placed upon the shoulders of the international community to work together to achieve this about support and further coordination and cooperation for the benefit of Afghanistan towards better future. The Kingdom also condemns the terrorist actions that targeted minorities in Afghanistan that constitute components of the Afghani people, and we wish to promote peace and security, and this requires a cooperative action at the level of the international community. In conclusion, I wish to express once again that the hope that our meeting today will come out with proper resolutions, recommendations that would alleviate the humanitarian crisis witnessed by the Afghani people and to promote security and stability both regionally and internationally. I should express once again due thanks to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for hosting us and for the commendable efforts put in for the benefit of the meeting. Due thanks to the Secretary General and to all the participants. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you, my brother, for this very important statement of yours. I now request His Excellency Mr. Hussein Brahim Taha, Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to deliver his statement.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honorable Premier
Excellency Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan,
Mr. Imran
Khan,
Excellence Monsieur
Excellency Mr. Shah Mahmoud Qureshi, Minister of Foreign Affairs
of the
Islamic Republic of Pakistan,
Votre Altesse Prince
His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan bin Abdullah, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Chair of the 14th Islamic Summit, Excellencies, representatives of the states and international organizations, distinguished audience. Assalamu alaikum.
Tout d'abord, je viens de
At the outset, I would like to thank all member states for electing me as the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and I avail myself of the opportunity to meet Your Excellencies, Your Highness, to assert that I am honored to serve our member states and the Muslim community worldwide. I pray to Allah Almighty to help me undertake this responsibility, and I am sure that Your Excellencies will always support and guide my endeavors through your counsel and support in this regard I express in this regard heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the chair of the 14th session of the Islamic Summit, for calling for this so important meeting as part of the Kingdom's firm commitment to supporting Islamic solidarity and joint Islamic action. I also thank the government and people of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for their most cordial welcome and generous hospitality to my daughter's person and to delegations participating in this meeting for the excellent arrangements to ensure that the aspired results may be achieved. By hosting this important event, Pakistan reaffirms its total commitment to the issues facing our wider Muslim community with a keen dedication to maintaining security and peace in the region. I would like also to express gratitude to you all, Excellencies, for attending this meeting and for taking the hardship to join us despite the travel complications related to the coronavirus with its new variant Omicron. This effort best expresses Islam's universal message of harmony and harmonious relations and solidarity. Honorable Prime Minister, we view this meeting as a very important event in support of the Afghan people. All the more so because the issue of Afghanistan has been high on the OIC's agenda for decades. The organization has always taken strong positions supportive of this member country. The OIC General Secretariat has been following the unfolding events in Afghanistan with great interest, being fully committed to the region's peace, security, stability and development. Based on its charter principles of promoting peace and security, in which the principle of non-intervention in the Member States' domestic affairs and respect for their strategic national choices, the General Secretariat calls for upholding sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of Afghanistan. In this regard, the General Secretariat calls for all Afghan parties to work together in the best interest of the Afghan people. The call is also for all parties in Afghanistan to protect people's lives, refrain from violence, and work towards achieving the aspirations and stability of the Afghani people. The General Secretariat reaffirms its full support for reconciliation in Afghanistan, expressing hope that all parties will commit themselves to peaceful dialogue to resolve all differences. It also stresses the need to respect international and humanitarian law and observers of Islamic and universal human rights. Moreover, the OIC General Secretary expressed full readiness to cooperate with regional and international efforts to bring peace for the Afghan people, mobilizing all its potential to contribute positively to peace, security and stability in Afghanistan and establish necessary contacts in this regard. Honorable Prime Minister, the role of the OIC member states in delivering humanitarian assistance is more necessary than ever before because of the growing humanitarian challenges facing the Afghani people that the coronavirus pandemic has exacerbated. In this regard, we call for promoting the role of the OIC mission in Kabul with the necessary financial, human and logistical resources to fully deliver its full responsibility in supporting development in Afghanistan. We also call on the Member States and all OIC institutions to deliver humanitarian assistance through the OIC mission in Kabul, in keeping with the recommendations of the final communique of the open-ended extraordinary meeting of the level of permanent representatives to discuss the situation in Afghanistan held at the OIC headquarters in Jeddah in 2021. In this regard, we commend the humanitarian assistance provided by some member states to the Afghan people, including the airlift launched by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia simultaneously with the beginning of this conference. In this regard, we also call on all parties concerned in Afghanistan to cooperate fully with the OIC's mission in Kabul to create favorable conditions for civilian safety and security, and enabling humanitarian institutions to provide relief to affected populations in Afghanistan. Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, the international community is called upon now more than ever to ensure Afghanistan is never again used as a platform or haven for terrorist organizations, and that there is no foothold for terrorist groups in the country. For the international community to achieve this, it is called upon to find sustainable political solutions to the situation of Afghanistan, to help bring the country back into the international mainstream and benefit from the global economic and financial systems. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Foreign Ministers, in conclusion, I would like to reaffirm the full support of the OIC's General Secretariat for regional and international efforts to bring stability to Afghanistan. The OIC is ready to carry out a follow-up on the implementation of the outcome of this extraordinary meeting and to play its role in supporting humanitarian action in Afghanistan in coordination with the relevant OIC institutions and with relief agencies across the Muslim world, United Nations, and other agencies. I wish this meeting full success in its deliberations. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Secretary General, for your kind remarks. I now request His Excellency Mr. Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Turkey, to deliver a statement. He will speak on behalf of the Asia Group of the OIC member states.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Prime Minister, Secretary General, colleagues, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me also thank our Pakistani and Saudi brothers for organizing this meeting, this very timely meeting. We are pleased to have Secretary General Brother Taha for his first Council of Foreign Ministers. Quran al-Karim tells us that this community of yours is one single ummah. Solidarity with our Afghan brothers and sisters is a moral obligation and a religious duty. Nearly 23 million people, 60% of the population, are facing hunger in Afghanistan. The OIC should play a leading role in mobilizing the international support for Afghanistan. The resolution that we will adopt today should be implemented. First, we should coordinate humanitarian assistance. Let me also thank Pakistan for facilitating the transfer of humanitarian aid. We also support Uzbekistan's effort to make Termes another UN hub for aid, especially to the northern regions. The establishment of a trust fund by the Islamic Development Bank is a step in the right direction. Second, the collapse of the economy must be prevented. Continuing sanctions unfortunately cripple the financial system. pledge will be meaningless unless this money reaches the Afghans. We should work on solutions to unlock financial channels for resolving liquidity and bank transfer problems. Third, humanitarian and economic crisis increase migratory pressure and the burden on neighboring countries. OIC should work with other international organizations like UNHCR and IOM to support displaced persons. Fourth, engagement. Working with Taliban is necessary to achieve stability. As brothers, we continue to advise the acting government to be inclusive, protect the rights of all, and expand access of women and girls to employment and education. We welcome the positive statements and steps to this end. This will increase the legitimacy and strength of the government both inside and outside of the country. Dear sisters and brothers, the worsening crisis has a great impact on the Muslim nations of Asia. We welcome the active engagement of Asian nations, including Pakistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia, with the Afghanistan issue. We should do more and play a flagship role as the Islamic community. By organizing a joint visit of OIC foreign ministers to Kabul, we can show solidarity with our Afghan brothers and sisters and give our messages directly and take the lead as Islamic nations. Before concluding, I want to highlight our determination and support to achieve an independent Palestine with Al-Quds al-Sharif as is its capital. Dear brothers and sisters, our Afghan sisters and brothers deserve a better future, and we must take action now. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Brother Bevlut, for your insightful remarks. I now request His Excellency Ayman Safdi, the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Jordan, to deliver his statement. He will speak on behalf of the Arab group of the OIC member states.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي العربي الهاشمي الأمين. دولة رئيس وزراء جمهورية باكستان
the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Imran Khan, Your Excellency, the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Shahbaz Mahmood Qureshi, Your Excellency, Your Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Amir Faisal bin Farhan of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Your Excellency, the Secretary General of the OIC, Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Excellencies, Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Allow me first to extend my heartfelt thanks to our brothers and sisters from the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for the excellent arrangements for this meeting and for the warm welcome hospitality extended to us at such a short notice. Due thanks are also extended to our brothers from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the initiative of calling for this meeting of particular importance. Due thanks are also extended to His Excellency the Secretary General of the OIC, Mr. Ibrahim Taha, whom we congratulate on his assumption of his new responsibilities as head of the OIC and for his efforts. Your Excellencies and dear brothers, within the chaos that Afghanistan witnessed over the past years, obscurity spread all across the country and brought sufferings to the Afghani people, and the fees were paid by the Islamic Afghani people and by other Muslim people across the world. Today, Afghanistan stands at a crossroads, either to further work and degrade and continue the conflicts that will bring further sufferings and will allow the return of the terrorist groups and their dangers for the world at large, or we should start a new path of rebuilding or reconsideration that would be observant of the rights of the Afghani people to dignity in line with the principles and laws of the Islamic faith, enabling the Afghani people of all segments, men and women, to the right to education, to work, and other human rights, and for all who live in Afghanistan to have their full rights and to prevent any resurgence of terrorism and terrorists. Either, therefore, a catastrophe of chaos and obscurity, or the fruits of rebuilding and reconsolidation of our efforts in line with the principles of our noble faith for the benefit of peace, equality, and justice and tolerance. The choice is clear, and in our world, both Arab and Muslim, we need to work together to protect the sisterly Afghani people whose half population are witnessing great dangers. We have to take the initiatives and become effective and proactive in protecting our brothers and our planet against extremism and terrorism and crimes and obscurity. Distinguished brothers of mine, we have reached a state where we can only witness the right decision that calls for negotiation and reaching out to each other and to the international community with shared goals towards supporting Afghanistan to become, once again, an effective member of the international community. We, in our Islamic world, will be the most adversely affected of the situation in Afghanistan if you don't act in time, and we have, therefore, a duty to help the Afghani people. Therefore, and here I'm addressing and I'm talking about the initiative from the proposal from the Jordanian kingdom to set up a committee that would define, in coordination with our partners in the international community, to act for the protection of the Afghan people with the principle of observance of international agreements and principles of our faith and our organization. In between, I would like to pay tribute to the efforts of our organization that have agreed for extending urgent assistance, and the Kingdom has extended everything possible in terms of humanitarian assistance through the Hashemite Kingdom, and Jordan will remain fully in support of the Afghan people and supporting every kind of support to them. My dear colleagues, wish to reiterate and underline the importance for our meeting to adopt and approve the decision and recommendation for the benefit of the Palestinian cause, and there would be no peace and comprehensive stability without resolving the Palestinian issue on basis that would ensure all rights of the Palestinian people, foremost of which their right to an independent state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital on the lines of 1967, on the grounds of the two-state solution for all people to live in peace and security side by side. And once again, on behalf of the Arab group, I'd like to extend due thanks to our brothers from Pakistan for the excellent arrangements for this meeting, and to our brothers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their commendable initiative. It's our hope that our present meeting will come out with a proper approach that will be effective in support of the Afghani people and Afghanistan in general. Thank you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. I now request His Excellency Yusuf Mohammed, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Niger, to deliver his remarks. He will speak on behalf of the African Group of the OIC member states.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Son Excellence, Monsieur le Premier ministre de la République islamique du Pakistan, Altesse royale, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Monsieur le Secrétaire général de l'Organisation de la coopération islamique, Mesdames, Messieurs, Assalamu alaikum. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier au nom du groupe africain les plus hautes autorités de la République sœur du Pakistan.
I would like to congratulate and commend the government and people of Pakistan for hosting this extraordinary session despite the adverse effects of COVID-19, and I would like also to thank them for the hospitality accorded to us since we arrived in this beautiful capital city. Allow me, dear Excellencies, to express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, for calling for the convening of this important meeting at this important historical juncture, and for his continuous support for our organization. We commend the good initiative taken by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for organizing this important meeting on the situation in Afghanistan. I would like also to thank all goodwill and all member states who are here and who have been working to solve the situation in Afghanistan through deliberations and consultations, bilateral and multilateral. We avail ourselves of this opportunity to express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to the newly appointed OIC Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, our extraordinary session of the CFM addresses the existing situation in Afghanistan, and we have been following with concern the situation unfolding over the recent months. And the situation has led to very many multifaceted crises at various levels: economic, security, and humanitarian. And we have also noted through the reports of some international organizations such as the UN, as well as the World Food Programme, that more than 20 million will face a food crisis by the end of this year, and notably about 4 million children and women who cannot have the required resilience to withstand the acute severity of the winter season which is approaching. Therefore, it's time, and we have to take effort and to do everything possible to have a new approach and to chart out a response plan to help our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving fast in order to avoid the unprecedented crisis looming in the horizon. Therefore, we need to face the situation and the humanitarian challenges, and we need to take every effort possible in order to put an end to this situation as fast as possible, and we call for all the efforts and all member states to provide the required support to solve all the problems facing the Afghan people without any interference in the domestic affairs of Afghanistan. And it's also important to call upon our brothers in Afghanistan to involve the international community in order to undertake their international commitments, and they also have to respect the rights of all segments of Afghani people according to the Islamic principles and tenets. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, by the end of this meeting, we hope that we can have a coordination mechanism which can provide the urgent humanitarian assistance required by our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan, and to coordinate with the international community in order to send such assistance to our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan as fast as possible. And we are sure that your various contribution would facilitate the implementation of such mechanism in consultation and in cooperation with the international concerned authorities and entities. And I believe that this meeting will result in commitments and pledges in order to provide assistance to the Afghan people. On the other hand, the African group in the OIC has always been supporting, providing continuous support to the Afghan people. And on the other hand, we are also supporting the rights of the Palestinians, and we shall continue to provide our support and assistance to all the efforts geared to maintain the inalienable rights of Palestine. May the Muslim Ummah live, and may the solidarity among ourselves live. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. I will now request Dr. Muhammad Suleiman Al-Jasir, Chairman of the Islamic Development Bank Group, to come to the rostrum and deliver his statement.
In the name of Allah, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, and peace and blessings be upon his Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, and his kith and kin, and the followers until the day of resurrection.
Your Excellency Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the OIC Summit Chair, Your Excellency Mr. Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Your Excellency Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Excellencies, representatives of the OIC member states, and representatives of the other countries and organizations invited. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be present at this critical and historic meeting. We gather here today to reaffirm our commitment and solidarity to our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. Given the gravity and complexity of the challenges in Afghanistan today, no single entity or institution can tackle them alone. The international community needs to collectively provide a holistic, practical, sustainable, and comprehensive solution, learning from the lessons of the past and leveraging the strengths of all stakeholders to address these daunting challenges. The immediate priority should be to urgently provide the core necessities, including food, shelter, clean water, child nutrition, healthcare services, education, and cash transfers, while taking appropriate mitigation measures to minimize potential leakages. Nevertheless, humanitarian response alone is not sufficient. There is a need for medium to long-term engagement to promote self-reliance and development beyond immediate humanitarian relief through reconstruction activities. Immediate humanitarian relief is essential to build foundation for stable economic recovery and development. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, around 76% of Afghanistan's population lives in rural areas and is involved in farming and agriculture. Consequently, the development of agriculture will be instrumental in addressing poverty reduction and promoting food security. In this regard, international and regional organizations may help promote food security by introducing climate-resilient crops and enhancing agricultural productivity. It is also significant to economically empower communities, especially youth and women, and low-income families by strengthening their resilience to shocks, improving productivity in vital economic activities, and supporting microfinance and SMEs of Afghani entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, since 1975, the Islamic Development Bank has established itself as a trustworthy AAA-rated multilateral development bank and South-South partner. For 46 years, it has built a proven track record of supporting its member countries' inclusive and sustainable socio-economic development. Acting upon the decades-long trust vested by its member countries, the Islamic Development Bank would be honored to accept proposed new mandate to manage the Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund. We will rely on our solid and extensive expertise and experience in efficiently managing various trust funds, such as the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, Al-Aqsa Fund, Al-Quds Fund, Lives and Livelihoods Fund, and the Awqaf Properties and Investment Fund, APIF. We also had experience in managing the Aceh program in Indonesia, cyclone effect management in Bangladesh, Endowment Fund for Children Education with UNICEF and King Salman Humanitarian and Relief Center, and Smart Education Initiative with Global Partnership for Education and the Arab Coordinating Group, in addition to working in many fragile and post-conflict contexts. Our work is valued by our trusted development partners such as the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UN aid agencies, the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, the Saudi Fund for Development, Qatar Foundation, Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, and the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, to name a few. The IDB, the Islamic Development Bank, may also provide the necessary platform for neighboring and regional countries to play a positive role in capacity development and technical assistance for institutional building by leveraging our unique reverse linkage mechanism for South-South cooperation. That could include also what was suggested by Mr. Qureshi for a group of experts from OIC, United Nations, and IFIs to address the issues of financial connectivity of Afghanistan. The Islamic Development Bank may also provide the necessary, leveraging its vast experience with the fragile states and exemplary credentials to manage such funds. The Islamic Development Bank is well positioned to act as the trustee and administrator of the proposed Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund. We look for generous support from all countries, international, regional and bilateral organizations, private sector, philanthropists, to announce their pledges to this fund. I hope today's forum will result in outcomes that will enable us to leverage the intrinsic Afghan entrepreneurial spirit to create local employment opportunities to ensure long-term peace, prosperity and growth in Afghanistan and beyond. I reiterate my thanks and appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation for this well-timed initiative. I also extend my special thanks to the government of Pakistan for its generosity and hospitality. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I thank Chairman Dr. Mohammed Salman Al-Jasir for his remarks and contributions to our discussions. I will now request Mr. Martin Griffiths, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, who is representing UN Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, to come to the rostrum and deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much indeed. And Honourable Prime Minister, Excellencies, friends and colleagues, it's my privilege here to represent the Secretary General of the United Nations, who wishes he could also have been here, but the words that I will speak are his. As the Honourable Minister of Pakistan has already said, I have spoken elsewhere of the fact that Afghanistan's economy is now in free fall, and that if we don't act decisively and with compassion, I fear that this fall will pull down the entire population with it. 23 million people are already facing hunger. Health facilities are overflowing with malnourished children. Some 70% of teachers are not getting paid, and millions of children, Afghanistan's future, are out of school. The value of the Afghani currency is plummeting. Trade is damaged by the lack of confidence in the financial sector, as we have heard, and the space for borrowing and investment has constricted dramatically. So the need for liquidity and stabilization of the banking system, again, as we have heard from a number of speakers, is now urgent, not only to save the lives of the Afghan people, but also to enable humanitarian organizations to respond and operate effectively. I welcome the decision by the World Bank's Afghanistan Reconstruction Trust Fund to transfer $280 million by the end of December to UNICEF and the World Food Programme. This step should be followed by reprogramming of the whole fund to support the people of Afghanistan this winter. Families simply do not have the cash for everyday transactions, while prices for key commodities continue to rise. The cost of wheat and fuel are up by around 40%, and food now accounts for more than 80% of average household expenditure. Basic social services that all Afghans depend on are collapsing as international development support, upon which the country has depended for so long, has frozen up. By the middle of next year, as estimated by UNDP, universal poverty may reach 97% of the population of Afghanistan. That could be the next grim milestone. Within a year, 30% of Afghanistan's GDP could be lost altogether, could be, while male unemployment may double to 29%. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation is coming today together to express the willingness, as we have heard, to help avert this disaster and to contribute to the humanitarian endeavor. And I am here to say, Excellencies, that the United Nations stands firmly with you and your efforts and your plans, and both of us in solidarity with the people of Afghanistan. Next year, the United Nations will seek funding for the largest ever appeal for humanitarian assistance for a country, an annual appeal of about $4.5 billion to help the most vulnerable in Afghanistan with life-saving assistance. But our plan is a stopgap measure for over 21 million people who need that assistance. Of course, it must be funded as a matter of priority. But the crisis is huge. The humanitarian response is effective and it continues to scale up. And thanks to generous donor support, the Afghanistan response plan for 2021 was fully funded, a unique achievement in these years. But going forward, we need more than this. Afghanistan will not get through the winter on emergency aid alone, again, as has been said by previous speakers. We also need flexible donor funding that can be used to ensure salaries for public sector workers and support to basic services such as health, education, electricity, livelihoods, to allow the people of Afghanistan some chance to get through this winter and some encouragement to remain home with their families. Going forward, we also need constructive engagement with the de facto authorities in a process of meaningful dialogue to clarify what we expect of each other. The consequences of inaction on these three fronts are clear, and the three fronts are emergency assistance, flexible funding, and an engagement to be clear about what we expect from each other. And if we do not act fast on these three fronts, we know that we risk the collapse of this great country, and people will run out of hope, and the region, and indeed the world, will see destabilization increase with all the consequences that we have seen so clearly in history. Honourable Prime Minister, we're gathered here today at a moment of exceptional gravity for the people of Afghanistan. We have the advantage of being forewarned of the fate that awaits them if we do not act. We have the responsibility, because we are forewarned, knowing that if we do not act with urgency and with a collective will, there will be a terrible reckoning. We have that chance. We have that opportunity given to us also by those who convened this important international meeting. We cannot fail to do what is right and what we know is possible. Thank you.
I thank UN Under-Secretary General Martin Griffiths for his contribution to our deliberations. I now request His Excellency Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, for his keynote address.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Secretary General OIC, respected foreign ministers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome all of you to Pakistan. The irony is that 41 years ago, the extraordinary meeting of the OIC was held in Pakistan. It was discussing Afghanistan. And since then, all the troubles of Afghanistan started. No country has suffered as much as Afghanistan. 40 years of conflict. And then add to it recently prolonged drought, 75% of the people living off the land. And then, even before 15th of August, half the population below the poverty line. years of corrupt governance. 75% of the budget supported by foreign aid. Now, a country in this situation, after 15th August, if the foreign aid dries up, the foreign reserves get frozen, banking system freezes, any country is going to collapse, let alone Afghanistan, which has suffered for the past 40 years. So I'm really glad all the speakers before me mentioned the gravity of the situation. Especially I would like to point out what Michael Griffith, Under Secretary of the United Nations Secretary General, what he had to say, the figures he gave. So the point is that if the world does not act, this will be the biggest man-made crisis which is unfolding in front of us. We, the OIC, it's a big responsibility on us, because not only is it the situation in Afghanistan as it unfolds, but it's a religious duty to help them. And I must say that we have to, and I speak to the United States specifically, they must de-link the Taliban government from the 40 million Afghan citizens. Even if they have they've been in conflict with Taliban for 20 years. But this is a question of the people of Afghanistan. 40 million human beings. And that's why it is very important that action is taken immediately. Already we are late. The Afghan winter, everyone knows, is extremely severe. And these preconditions the Taliban have to, unless they have an inclusive government, human rights, women's rights, do not allow terrorism from the soil. Unless these preconditions are met, the humanitarian aid will not flow, and their foreign reserves won't be allowed to have them, or the banking system won't be allowed to function. This is very important. That first of all, the one time I met the Taliban foreign minister, he categorically said that they wanted to comply with these three conditions. Now the point is, we must understand that when we talk about human rights, every society is different. Every society's idea of human rights and women's rights are different. I just give you an example of the Pakhtunkhwa province, which borders Afghanistan. Because the culture is similar, because Taliban is basically predominantly a Pashtun movement, and there are more Pashtuns on our side of the border. Now, the city culture is completely different from the rural culture. Culture in Kabul was always different to rural areas. Just like in Peshawar, it is completely different, the culture, to the districts adjoining the Afghanistan border. So I give you an example. We give stipends to the child's parents to put the girls into school. But in our tribal districts, or the district adjoining Afghanistan, if we are not sensitive to the cultural norms of those people, even with stipends, they won't send their girls to school. But if we are sensitive to their cultural norms, without stipends, they're willing to send their girls to school. So this sensitivity, I'm afraid, when we are talking about human rights and women's rights, we have to be sensitive about this. But my big worry is that unless action is taken immediately, and I mean immediately, because we've been saying this for now 2-3 months, unless action is taken immediately, Afghanistan is heading for chaos. Any government, when it can't pay its salaries of its public servants, hospital, doctors, nurses, any government is going to collapse. But chaos suits no one. It certainly does not suit the United States. Because what if there's chaos there, and chaos means the inability, if the Afghan government does not have the ability to fight terrorism. And we know ISIL is now a threat. It has been a threat. We have had attacks from Afghan border, from ISIL into Pakistan. So the only way you can control what is, and ISIL is capable of international terrorism. And the only reason you can deal with it is if there's a stable Afghan government. And same with Pakistan. Our worry is, and remember, Pakistan lost 80,000 people. We were the biggest collateral damage of the Afghan war. Our economy was shattered. Over $100 billion lost to the economy. 3.5 million people internally displaced. Well, the last thing we want is chaos in Afghanistan, more refugees. We already have over 3 billion Afghan refugees. To date, we have 234,000 Afghans who've overstayed their visa because their situation in Afghanistan means they can't go back. And remember, this is a country, like most developing countries, who are suffering from the fallout of the coronavirus. COVID-19, we're all suffering from the impact it has had on world economies. So we are in no position to deal with this, another influx of refugees and terrorism. So my request to the international community, to the United States specifically, I know the Europeans are extremely sensitive. They understand the situation. There's a refugee problem not just in Europe, all over the world. So everyone knows that this chaos will lead not just countries like Pakistan and Iran. Other countries will also eventually have refugee problems. But in much richer countries, you have 2,000-3,000 refugees, and there's an issue. The far-right parties raised this issue about refugees. But we poor countries, who are struggling, whose economy is just about getting on their feet, how do we cope with hundreds and thousands of refugees? So it is in no one's interest that there's chaos in Afghanistan. And that's why I was very impressed by the Islamic Development Bank's suggestions of immediate, medium, and long-term ways of helping the people of Afghanistan or making the economy sustainable. I would look forward to the foreign ministers that you will come up with a roadmap by the end of this evening. And that roadmap not only should be pushed by the OIC, by the United Nations, by the European Union, and by, of course, the United States. Because, as I repeat, chaos in Afghanistan suits no one. And finally, because I have this platform of the OIC foreign ministers, I would just raise 2 more points. One is Palestine and Kashmir. The people of Palestine and Kashmir look to us. They want to see a unified response from us about their human rights, about their democratic rights, rights which United Nations Security Council resolutions have given them, and unfortunately not implemented. We should, on every forum, raise our voices and a unified stance. And lastly, I want to talk about Islamophobia. Unfortunately, the refugee crisis in Western countries has exacerbated Islamophobia. Islamophobia really started reaching a dangerous levels after 9/11, when terrorism and Islam were connected, when terms like radical Islam came, they connected somehow. Islam was responsible for terrorism and radicalization. So this connection has made life difficult for people living in Western countries, Muslims living in Western countries. The man in the street in the West cannot distinguish between what is a moderate Muslim and what is a radical Muslim. So you have stuff like in New Zealand, a man walks into a mosque and shoots 50 people. It's because this term, radical Islam, Islamic terrorism, they have to be delinked. And secondly, the reason for Islamophobia is people in the West do not understand when our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mocked or ridiculed or insulted. They can't understand the reaction amongst the Muslims because their attitude to religion is different to ours. So it's very important for the OIC to play its part in explaining to the Western world on forums like European Union, United Nations, their think tanks, making them understand. Rather than this gap growing between Muslims and non-Muslims because of inability to understand Islam, it is our responsibility in the OIC that we make them understand. We have in Pakistan formed an authority, it's called Rahmatul Alameen Authority. The purpose is to have top Pakistani scholars in this authority who coordinate with Muslim scholars all over the world. And one of the objectives of this Rahmatul Alameen Authority is that there should be a considered intellectual response when things like a cartoon appears insulting our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. There should be a proper response from scholars to make them understand why Muslims react, that the love and reverence we have for our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, because they don't understand this. And secondly, to make them understand that our Holy Prophet was called Rahmatul Alameen. He was to bring mercy for mankind. He was not called Rahmatul Muslimeen. He was not just for Muslims. Just like our God, Allah, is God of all human beings. So, our Prophet united human beings. His whole message was of love. But this is not, the people in the West do not understand this. There is so much propaganda against Islam. And unfortunately, we do not have a coherent and an intellectual, scholarly response to this. So one objective of this authority is to, in coordination with all the Muslim scholars, we will respond, and we would like the OIC Secretary General also to know about this response. We will consult you. And whenever anything happens, there should be a proper response to that. But secondly, it's also for my own country, because we feel that we can raise the morality and the ethics of our society by making people understand the seerat of the Prophet, his teachings, to raise the ethical standards in our country. And at the same time, unite our people. Because unfortunately, religion is used by elements in our society to divide people, spread hatred. The whole idea is to unite human beings under the teachings of our Prophet. So finally, I again welcome all of you. I hope we have a very productive session this afternoon, and then we come up with a very coherent a strategy which I said immediate, medium-term and long-term, how to get Afghanistan out of this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your gracious presence and words of wisdom. I'm sure the House values your thought-provoking address and candor. Your remarks comprehensively covered all important dimensions of today's topic and would guide the proceedings of this extraordinary session. We will now take a break for 10 minutes. Now, the session will resume after 10 minutes, as the next segment would be off-camera. Media personnel and guests in the galleries are kindly requested to leave.
اس وقت آپ لائیو مناظر دیکھ رہے ہیں. یہ پاکستان پارلیمنٹ سے وزیر اعظم پاکستان جناب عمران خان صاحب جو ہیں اپنا کی نوٹ ایڈریس اس افتتاحی جو اجلاس ہے آرگنائزیشن آف اسلامک کانفرنس اسلامک کوآپریشن OIC کا 74th ایکسیپشنل ایمرجنسی اجلاس ہے یہ افغانستان پر. اور یہ تاریخی اجلاس ہے. یہ جو مناظر آپ نے آج دیکھے ہیں یہ تاریخی مناظر ہیں. 40 سال بعد جو ہے یہ اجلاس افغانستان پر ہو رہا ہے اور دنیا کی اہم ممالک اور خطے کے موجود ہیں اس اجلاس میں. OIC کے تمام ممالک شرکت کر رہے ہیں اور ساتھ ہی UN سیکیورٹی کونسل کے جو 5 مستقل اراکین ہیں ان کے بھی افغانستان کے نمائندے موجود ہیں یہاں پہ. اور افتتاحی اجلاس کے آغاز میں سیکرٹری جنرل OIC جناب ابراہیم طاہا اور سعودی وزیر خارجہ، اردن کے وزیر خارجہ، ترکی کے وزیر خارجہ اور اسلامی ترقیاتی بینک اسلامک ڈیولپمنٹ بینک کے چیئرمین، وزیر خارجہ نائجر کے، نائجر جو ہے وہ رکن ہے کشمیر کانٹیکٹ گروپ بھی جو OIC کا ہے، سعودیہ بھی ہے، ترکی بھی ہے. تو 3 ممالک جو کہ کانٹیکٹ گروپ کشمیر کے بھی جو ممبرز ہیں انہوں نے بھی اس افتتاحی